Good morning. Welcome to breakfast this Saturday morning with Nagamon Chetty and John Kay.
Our headlines today. More areas of England are added to the government's watch list of coronavirus hotspots as scientists warn that outbreaks at university are highly likely.
Meanwhile, back to work, government departments are ordered to get more staff into the office by the end of this month.
A remarkable recovery from England's cricketers as they snatch victory by 2 runs against old foes Australia, who had thought they were cruising home in the first T20 match in Southampton.
Good morning. The weekend brings us a mix of sunshine and showers. Most of the showers will be in the north and the west today, and they'll drift their way southeastwards tomorrow. I'll bring you all the details throughout the morning.
Good morning. It's Saturday, the 5th of September. Our top story is that several more areas of England, including Leeds and Middlesbrough, have been added to the government's watch list of places with high rates of coronavirus. They'll be closely monitored and restrictions may be reimposed if infections continue to rise.
Well, the leader of Leeds Council has told Breakfast this morning that they've been working closely with the police on enforcing things. But she told us she's still very concerned that the message isn't getting through.
Last weekend, we issued, with the police, 7 of the £10,000 fines for organisers of illegal raves, for example, and more individual fines coming in. It's a message that all of us need to keep repeating, and that partnership work on the ground, I think, that will come through and help us to move forward and really see some changes in behaviour, hopefully.
Well, there are also concerns that students travelling back to big cities like Leeds could lead to a rise in cases. The government scientific body, SAGE, is warning that outbreaks linked to universities are highly likely.
It's absolutely correct that for the vast majority of students themselves, their risk of developing severe symptoms is very, very low. What we're more worried about, really, is universities really acting as amplifiers. So potentially lots of students mixing together, that could cause lots of infection. That could spill over into the community. But also, there's a concern at the end of term when students start to travel home to their families, potentially interacting with more elderly relatives, more vulnerable people with underlying health conditions. That's where the real concern is.
So that's back to university. What about back to work? We've heard this morning that the government has written a letter to senior members of the civil service urging them to get public sector workers in England back into their offices.
Yeah, it says it wants 80% of staff to be able to attend their usual workplace at least once a week by the end of September. But the head of one union has accused ministers of outdated thinking.
Let's speak to our political correspondent, Nick Eardley, who's been following this for us. Nick, I guess the government is trying to lead by example here, is it, with public servants in the office?
Yeah, morning, John. I think that's absolutely right, because we've already seen the government say to people, speak to your employer, see if it's safe to maybe go back to the office. There hasn't been a great uptake in that, and I think this is trying to now say, well, if we can get some civil servants back, maybe that will encourage other people to do the same. So, as you say, the idea is to get 80% of people back in the office at some point during the week. So it's not 80% at once, it'll be staggered, it's a rota system, but the idea is to get most people coming in at least once a week. It's across the country. This isn't just about London, it's about the civil service in general, though the letter that's gone out does say that civil servants in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland should stick to local guidelines. And remember, in those parts of the UK, the message is still work from home if you can. The Prime Minister thinks this is a really good idea. He's saying it'd be good for people, for the workforce in general, also good for local economies that have really suffered from the shutdown over the last few months. Unions aren't convinced, though, and there is some scepticism that this is necessary. So the Civil Servants Union, the FDA, is saying the workplace has changed and actually we should be spending more time working out how to adapt to more people working from home and not having to make the commute and come into the office, and ministers would be better spending their time on that. But if you want to know just how seriously Boris Johnson's taking this, he's asked every department every week to send him figures on how many people they're getting back into the office. So clearly something that the government's taking very seriously.
OK, Nick, thank you very much indeed for that. That's back to work. What about back from holiday?
Yeah, because travellers returning to Scotland from Portugal will now have to self-isolate for 14 days. This under new rules which came into force just a few hours ago.
Yeah, the country was added to the quarantine list after a rise in infections there. And it comes after Wales also imposed its own restrictions on people coming back from Portugal yesterday. Nothing has changed for people who live in England and Northern Ireland, though.
These holidaymakers were on one of the last flights back to Glasgow from Portugal before quarantine was reintroduced.
We were just disappointed that Scotland obviously have to quarantine, but England don't. So it seems ridiculous. People are all going to fly into England now and then drive up the road.
It was a risk. We knew it, we were making a risk anyway, so we only lost a day. It is annoying, but I'm just glad we made it home in time.
We were supposed to come back Saturday, but we had to pay an extra £100 to come back just in case. So we're scared we're going to get after my mother, so we had to come back.
In other news this morning, a minute's silence has been held in Beirut 1 month on from that explosion that killed nearly 200 people and left tens of thousands more homeless.
Rescuers have been digging through the rubble after sensor equipment suggested that someone could still be alive in the wreckage. We can talk to the Independent's Middle East correspondent, Belle True. Belle, tell us what has happened now, because we spoke yesterday, didn't we, when there was a hope that perhaps a miracle of sorts would be happening.
Well, actually, here, speaking to the different rescue workers, both the volunteer Chilean team and the Lebanese Civil Defence, there does seem to be a marginal more amount of hope this morning. So last night they held their first press conference. The Chilean team did not want to go into details or confirm anything, and they actually said that they might halt work at 10 p.m. But they came back in the middle of the night. They sensed what they said was a smell. They saw a large presence of flies. They moved the equipment and they tested an area that's just next to a stairwell to the right of the site. And there they again found some more of these, what they call breaths. So more signs of life. So what they said to me this morning is they actually have more hope today than they did yesterday of finding someone or something under the rubble. But so far we don't have confirmation of what that is.
And Belle, of course, the situation there is very much needing some hope, because still thousands have been left homeless and there are still people missing.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's quite a bleak atmosphere here in Beirut, because, you know, tens of thousands of people were made homeless. We had 6,000 people who were injured and over 190 who were killed. There's still several missing people here. So what they're looking for is that chink of hope that there might be someone who survived under the rubble for a full month, but obviously it's not very likely. In the meantime, of course, the neighbourhoods that have been hit are still devastated. There's still destroyed buildings, there's still destroyed businesses, and there's no sense from the authorities when that reconstruction is going to happen or how it's going to happen and who's going to pay for it. So people here are really hoping and praying for a good piece of news, possibly the only good piece of news that Lebanon's had in several weeks.
OK, Belle, I know you're a resident there as well, so you take care of yourself. And Belle True's Middle East correspondent for The Independent.
President Trump has said that he hasn't seen yet any proof that the Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny was poisoned with Novichok. Doctors in Germany, where Mr Navalny is being treated, say they have evidence beyond proof beyond doubt that the nerve agent was used, and is asking the Russian government for an explanation.
The Labour Party says the former Australian Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, is the wrong choice to be an advisor to the new UK Board of Trade. He's been accused of being homophobic and misogynistic, but Boris Johnson has rejected claims that Mr Abbott wasn't suitable for the unpaid role. The board has been set up to help ministers and to encourage firms to do more business internationally.
You might find it a bit more difficult than usual getting hold of a newspaper this morning. Activists from Extinction Rebellion have been blocking access to 3 printing presses in different parts of the country.
The group is protesting against the way that the papers are reporting climate change. Police say that they've made 13 arrests. The Sun newspaper has condemned the attack the actions as an attack on the freedom of the press.
And Blackpool's world-famous illuminations have officially been switched on, and this year it was done by a group of what's called coronavirus heroes.
The annual event is usually attended by huge crowds, isn't it? It was held virtually this time because of the pandemic. The display, which stretches for miles along the coast, is staying on for an extra 2 months this year in order to try to boost tourism in the area.
Looks brilliant. 9:10. Now, have you been trying to book a driving test? If you have, if you're one of the tens of thousands of people who has, you might well be struggling because computer problems, a huge backlog means loads of learner drivers in England and Wales have had their tests cancelled and then delayed.
Yeah, booking for tests started up again 2 weeks ago, but for many learners it's been a huge struggle to get a slot booked in, as our reporter Adam McLean has been finding out.
It's Jack's first time on the road since March. His test was cancelled and lessons suspended, and only now can he make up for lost time behind the wheel.
If you've checked everything, you're happy with your mirrors?
Yep.
You can move off when you're ready, Jack, and at the end of the road, we're turning left.
My original test was booked in April, start of April. Obviously, everything went into lockdown, which then got rearranged for August. And then I got told just to wait for their reply, that they'll tell me when it was.
After spending more than 4 hours in an online queue, Jack tried to book in the early hours of the morning and managed to get a test on the 30th of September.
It was an early rise, but it got the job done. And I booked it for a month's time from when I had to press the link. So
Got the judgment, and it's absolutely perfect. Well done. Wow, panic over. I know it's been 4 or 5 months, so I'm thinking we got a test coming up pretty soon.
For those teaching others to drive, the shortage of tests presents a big challenge.
We were pleased that we were allowed back to work. I mean, that was the big plus for us. But then when we came back, and then obviously we're dealing with the problems we've got, we're trying to book a driving test. We've not got anything for the pupils to aim for, so trying to get the lessons sorted out is really difficult.
Before March, there were nearly 4,500 driving tests in Great Britain every day. There is now a huge backlog of people whose tests have been postponed or cancelled. To help more people book a test, the DVSA says that it's increasing the number of tests each examiner does every day from 5 to 6. And from the 14th of September, it'll be possible to book a test as far as 18 weeks in advance, as opposed to the current 6-week limit.
I waited all this time to then realise that there's like 500,000 other people in the exact same boat, and like we just can't do anything about it. And I just feel like we're not getting anywhere. Like I don't think I've seen anyone actually book a driving test.
And while practical tests have been suspended, the theory tests of provisional drivers have been expiring. Those certificates won't be extended beyond the 2-year limit, meaning many who are close to taking a practical test will have to retake the theory test.
It's so frustrating, especially the point, like, I was good to go, like, it was literally in spitting distance of sitting my test, and then all this happens, and I was completely patient about it. Like, I wanted it to be safe for both, like, my instructor or, like, the test centre, like to deal with it, but I thought on hand that MOTs are a legal requirement, so a case of, like, they were completely waived during this, so why is expired theory test not waived? Like, it's completely ridiculous.
The Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency says that all 210,000 candidates who had a test booked in March have been re-invited to book a test, and that from the 14th of September, a further 375,000 testing slots will be available to book. Adam McLean, BBC News.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.